Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for another episode of Fuck, Marry,
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 6 of Fuck, Marry, Kill. This episode is Devika's, so I'll let her take it away.
Yeah, so just a quick reminder on the game. This is a take on that childhood game, Fuck, Marry, Kill, where we're given 3 options and we choose which one we would fuck, marry, or kill. And reminder, this is all in good fun. We wouldn't want to do any of those things to any of the stuff that we talk about.
Unless they're
and
really
especially
hot.
on this, you're gonna wish you hadn't said that when you hear what today's subject is, because this is like an all kill episode, I think.
Oh God, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well,
But it's okay.
Let's start with the drinks.
Yes, for sure. Cheers.
Cheers. What you got going today?
So I have yet another Alentejo
Okay.
wine, but it's a white this time. I think it's called Monte Coleño. I got to look it up, but maybe I'll put it in show notes or something.
You can just make it up. I'll never know.
I did have Douro Valley wine yesterday. We had a friend from SF come visit us, and he brought over like a really nice Douro Valley red, which I enjoyed.
Cool.
But what about you? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a rosé today, which I'm not a huge rosé person, but this is from Frog's Leap Winery, which I used to have so much fun going to. And it's called La Grenouille Rojan. I'm probably butchering that because I don't know French pronunciation whatsoever, but it means the what was it? The rosy frog or something.
Oh, I kind of like that.
Yeah. So it's really
That's
cute.
cool.
But when we drank it in Napa, we would call it porch pounder because we're American.
Nice.
Because we would pound
Very
it
cool.
on porches.
Yeah, that sounds like a good life though, right there. Porch pounder. Very cool. Very
Yes,
cool.
porch pounder. It's really good. It really is. It's not like super sweet or anything.
Yeah, I don't like when they're too sweet. It kind of gives me a headache anyways too. So I need to make a correction from episode, I think it's episode 4.
Okay.
So I said the founder of the Mormon Church was John Smith, like from Pocahontas, and it is not. It is Joseph Smith.
Oh, God.
So
I didn't catch that
apologize for that slip up. I didn't catch it. Even when we were going through edits, I didn't catch it. And then I was talking to a fellow Boilermaker, Steve Jordan,
Boiler Up.
who I think, Boiler Up. I'm sure you guys have met in the various years, but we were chatting because the guy who caught Chauncey, the murderer from SF4, he's a very distant relative through marriage to Steve Jordan. So that was kind of fun. And then while talking to him, I was like, oh shoot, I made this mistake. And so I wanted to make sure that I clarified that one.
Got it. Yeah, I just heard a Gein name and I was like, yep, you're right.
Yep. And it just computed. It went right through for sure.
Cool. Our first correction corner.
First correction corner. Yeah. That we didn't input, but you're hearing it now. So it works out. How's everything going for you?
Going really well. I just got back from a trip from Chicago and I did a couple of commercials. I had a really cool, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it was a Nike commercial and that was really fun.
Ooh.
And just got to visit a bunch of my friends in Chicago. Florida's been kind of tough for me because I don't know a lot of people here. So it's always nice to go home and visit.
For sure.
Yeah, what about you?
For sure. Nice homecoming. But that's really cool. That's exciting. Yeah. I've been good. We have a lot of travel coming up. We're going to Scotland tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
So that should be fun. A nice little holiday. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's tomorrow. So I'm really pumped about that. That's been exciting. Still working on the Lit Mag launch. So I'll give you updates on that. And then still working on the book too. So that's been taking up a lot of time. But I did go out with a couple friends to this comedy show in Lisbon, and it was so much fun.
Oh, good.
So are you ready for this topic?
Yeah, hit me with it.
Okay, so this week we are doing serial killers that inspired the silver screen.
What?
Yeah, so these are people who have had movies made about them.
Yeah, you did tell me I would love this subject, and you're right.
Yes, this was made in your honor with the whole film thing going on and everything, and I think you'll like this. Actually, I should clarify, it's not actually serial killers, all of them. One of them is debated, but we'll just say serial
Okay.
killers, but it's really killers.
Got it.
Okay. So the first one that we're going to do is the one that we'll spend the most time on because he is for sure the most well-known, and you might have even heard about him. We're going to cover Ed Gein.
Oh.
Have you heard of him?
Yep.
Yeah. So he's the guy, he's inspired actually like a lot of movies and a lot of different characters in movies. But most famously, he's inspired Psycho. He's inspired Silence of the Lambs specifically, like Buffalo Bill character, and also had some influence on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Can you imagine inspiring all these like everlasting horror films because you were
Quite
that
a
bad
legacy.
of a person?
Yeah. And what's crazy about him is that he actually has had, I mean, listen, you're a murderer, but like he's had limited, compared to some other serial killers, like the amount of murders isn't really what's so messed up about him. It's like what he did with the bodies and how crazy the whole situation was and how weird it was and icky. And especially at this time, it was just a very bizarro case.
Yeah.
So Ed Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul, he was born in the Midwest. So he's a Midwesterner. He was born in not LaPorte, but La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Can you imagine?
Not LaPorte, Indiana. Can you imagine?
LaPorte, my little hometown, just has a shit ton of serial killers.
Yeah,
it's in the water.
That would be wild. Yeah.
Okay, you said LaGrange.
La Crosse.
Oh, La Crosse,
Wisconsin.
Sorry. La Crosse. Okay.
Yeah, he was born with La Crosse, Wisconsin, on August 27th, 1906. He had an older brother named Henry. His father, named George, was sort of a deadbeat and an alcoholic. There were some reports that George, the dad, was violent towards the boys, but he wasn't very involved in raising his sons because Ed's mother, Augusta, was very, very controlling, and she did most of the raising and also administer all the household and financial things as well. She was extremely religious, fanatically religious. She hated her husband, but likely didn't divorce him for religious reasons. And she used to preach to her sons a lot of Old Testament stuff,
Okay.
you know? Like even as really young children, she would read them the more violent parts. She would tell them about how drinking is very, very evil and that a lot of women are also naturally promiscuous and instruments of the devil. So
cute.
Very weird. Yeah. Weird stuff to be telling like young children adamantly and all the time.
It also sounds kind of like she taught children to kind of hate women.
Yeah. And like two boys, right? It's like not putting a lot of good out there.
Right.
And she also she didn't like her husband. She would speak poorly about him and the things that he did. But at a certain point, the family moved away from La Crosse and they bought a farm in Plainfield. And Plainfield was this teeny tiny town. There were only 700 people in the town, and they got this pretty isolated farm. And it's most likely because she just wanted to isolate the boys from anything that could be temptation or anything like that. I should mention too, she was also very against sex and sex being exclusively for procreation and post-marriage, but also just for procreation. So they weren't allowed to date or anything like that.
She sounds super fun.
Yeah, she sounds like a blast. But Ed really, really revered his mother, and he sort of idealized her, and he was very, very close to her, much closer than his brother Henry was. Like Henry would sometimes speak ill about his mom, and Ed just really wouldn't have it. Ed and Henry did go to school, but they weren't super accepted by their classmates. I don't know much about how Henry was at school, but Ed, who's the subject of this, he was pretty quiet. His grades weren't great. And he had a growth on his eye, and kids were really mean about it because kids,
or dicks,
especially then, there was no anti-bullying or anything. So yeah, they were kind of jerks. And so outside of school, his life is the farm. Him and Henry are just working on the farm all the time. They're super disciplined. Their father, George, dies in 1940 from pneumonia. And the guys end up doing a lot of odd jobs in town, including babysitting, which is a little creepy. Yeah, when you think about it. But there were no like weird incidents. Apparently, Ed was actually surprisingly good with children.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. Nothing weird there that was ever reported anyway. When Ed was 36, at one point he went to Milwaukee, and that was the farthest he had ever traveled.
At 36?
Yeah.
Yikes. Okay.
So like this was not a normal upbringing.
Yeah, he was super sheltered.
He was super sheltered. He was super attached to his mother. He was constantly being berated by this super biblical stuff. And at a certain point, too, Henry started bad-mouthing their mother a bit more, and he started being a little weirded out by Ed and Ed's relationship to his mother. Later in the 40s, Ed called the police to say that his brother went missing during a brush fire on the farm. And the police came and they found Henry dead. It was ruled an accident, but there was a lot of suspicious things around that, namely that Ed knew exactly where Henry's body was going to be, and also that Henry, his brother, had bruising on his head, like he had been bonked on the head.
Jeez, I don't remember this.
Yeah, so it's very like Cain and Abel,
Yeah.
like. But he was never charged with anything, and in fact, people in town kind of thought he was just weird guy, but harmless. You know?
Okay.
Henry's death was ruled an accident, but in retrospect, a lot of people suspected that it was Ed. And in retrospect, meaning after he was arrested much later.
Did it say anything about the brothers like didn't get along?
Just that the only thing that they said was about Henry bad-mouthing his mother. Mm-hmm. So in 1945, Augusta, Ed's mother, died. And when she died, Ed closed off all the rooms that his mother used to spend time in as a sort of shrine to her. He also started reading about things that he probably wouldn't have while his mother was alive. He read a lot of anatomy books. And at one point, he reportedly, according to him, considered removing his own penis. So when he would visit his mother's grave, he started grave robbing. So he started seeing fresh graves and sometimes not so fresh graves. And he would specifically grave rob women and take their bodies, and specifically middle-aged women. And he would take their bodies, but it wasn't just limited to that. He ended up going to a lot of graves and a lot of graveyards, not just his mother's. And this is going to be a little bit of a trigger. Like, I feel like this whole episode is going to have a lot of trigger alerts, but here's one of them. So he did tell police that he never had sex with any of the corpses, and because, quote unquote, of the smell, which is like...
That's the only reason?
Yeah, it's so messed up. And yeah, I know. It's like, when I read that, I was like, this is messed up.
That made me think of Saltburn. Have you seen Saltburn?
I have seen Saltburn. Dude, that movie.
Oh my God.
so many feelings about that movie. One of my best friends, Brett, loves that movie, and he recommended it to me without giving me any context. And I was just
dropped that bomb on you.
Dropped a bomb on me on that one. But so going back to Ed, so while he didn't have sex with any of the corpses, he did masturbate to them. There was also, exactly. So there was like this weird, like sexual element. There was speculation also of cannibalism, but he denied that, when he was arrested later. He did arguably do some equally terrible things though. He would take pieces of the body and skin them and make skin suits, which he would then wear.
I forgot about that part. How could I forget about that?
Yeah. Yeah, like he made a skin corset, skin leggings, like a full skin suit, and he would dance in the skin suits. He would also wear his mother's clothing while in these skin suits and have conversations with her. I'm going to give another trigger warning, like a trigger warning within a trigger warning.
Blanket trigger warning.
Just in case you want to skip 15 seconds on this. He did really messed up things like cutting out parts of women's genitalia, attaching them to women's underwear, and then wearing said underwear.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he would use their bodies to make various household items. He would shrink their heads, like preserve their heads. It was very, very disturbing.
Yeah. Your last episode had a skin thing in it.
Yeah,
It was like a skin vest.
It was. Well, that was poor. Yeah, that's right. Of the guy who died. That's right.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep talking about weird skinning things. I don't know why. It's actually, I almost did cannibalism for today's episode, and it just got so gnarly that I was like, I'm going to save this for when our listeners are more attached, so that
there's always next episode.
Stop listening. That's true. They can skip through.
Just tell us more skin stories.
Yeah, great. I'll be known for that. All right. So at this point, it seems like apart from his brother, Ed hadn't actually killed anyone. I mean, not that. Obviously, if he killed his brother, that's pretty messed up. Like that in itself is pretty terrible. So his first victim was a woman named Mary Hogan. And she was a woman who worked at the local bar. She was middle-aged, and she bore some resemblance in appearance alone to Ed's mother. Because unlike Ed's mother, she drank and she worked at a bar. Just like a normal woman, right? Yeah. Normal person. Sorry, Cannoli's barking right now. I know she usually doesn't bark.
Pearl's in here too, but she's snoozing on the bed.
Yeah, she was snoozing. Maybe she had a bad dream. Can you still hear her?
Yeah, she's dreaming about Ed Gein.
Oh gosh, I hope not. Bless her little heart. I hope she never dreams about something like that. Okay, Mary Hogan. So Mary worked at the bar, normal woman. She vanished around 1954. So he started going to the bar though around 1951. So for about 3 years, he was like getting to know her and planning this potentially. And according to Ed Gein, he killed her one day when they were together alone. He shot her in the head. So they were just drinking alone. He turned down the blinds and then he shot her. And according to him, this was his first murder. Yeah. And then for 3 years, he seemed to have not killed anyone else. And he also wasn't doing grave robbing for those 3 years. So it was almost like he got like his fix. But then in 1957, he went to a local hardware store to buy some, wait for it, antifreeze.
Antifreeze!
That's been in 3 of our episodes now. We've had antifreeze.
We should get sponsored.
Yeah, we need to find a good antifreeze company then. So Bernice Warden owns and operates the hardware store. And as she was pumping the antifreeze out into like the tub, because I guess back in the day, you had to do that. They didn't just come pre-prepared. And then Ed says to police that he went into a daze, and the next thing he remembered was dragging Bernice out of the store. But what had actually happened is he shot her with a gun from her own store while she was filling up the antifreeze.
Jeez. I wonder how, I mean, obviously no one was there, but like, what trigger was he having? Or like, did they get into an argument? Or did he just all of a sudden do it? Did it say anything about that?
It didn't, just that he went into a daze. It is important to note that she was also middle-aged and she bore resemblance to his mother.
Yeah.
So I think that there was something to do with that. Yeah. Like there seems to be a pattern, even in the type of women that he was digging up, even though there was a wide variety. Like there was body parts from a girl who was like 15 from a corpse, right? And so it wasn't always middle-aged women, but there seems to be this trend that it's middle-aged women that bear resemblance to his mother.
Okay.
So he put Bernice's body into the store's pickup truck, so her pickup truck, and he took the cash register. He drives the truck to a remote location, leaves it there, then walks by foot back to his car, drives to the truck and takes the body out and takes the cash register. Going back to like the town, Bernice's son, so Bernice is again the owner of the store. So Bernice's son, a gentleman named Frank Warden, had been out hunting, and he was a deputy from the sheriff's office. So he came back to his mother's store and he saw that the register had been taken, that there was blood in the counter, and that there was a bill of sale for the antifreeze. And even though the bill of sale wasn't complete, it did say the name of Ed Gein. And Frank, Bernice's son, had also heard from Ed that he was going to be going to the hardware store that day, the night before. So Frank immediately calls the cops, calls the sheriff's department, and says that we need to find Ed Gein. So they arrest Ed somewhere in the town, but they also go to his farm, and they walk into a complete horror show when they get to that house. So here's what they walk into. So the sheriff, who's this guy named Artie Shelley, and one of the other deputies go into the house, and they say that the stench is just horrendous. They stumble onto something hanging from a beam. And remember that it was hunting season.
Yeah.
So at first they thought it might have been a deer.
Oh, God.
But it didn't take long for them to realize that it was, in fact, a person. The head was cut off and the body had been gutted. The body was split from the neck to the groin and opened and turned out. And that body belonged to Bernice Worden, Frank Worden, the deputy's mother, and the owner of the hardware store. So pretty rough stuff.
Yeah.
The sheriff who found Bernice's body, so Artie, he actually died pretty young, and he died shortly after all of this. And a lot of people attribute it to the things that he had found in the house.
Yeah, I believe that.
Because
that would mess you up.
Yeah. Like even just seeing that, and also this is a town of 700 people. Like everyone knew each other. Like her son was working for him. You know what I mean? And so like these are like friends, like people like in your community. And in the house, they also found Mary Hogan, the bartender, her skull and her face, which Ed had made into a mask.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They found like a bowl made out of a skull. They found the corset, the skin corset, they skin leggings. They found just a plethora of just these old body things.
God, that's so weird.
All around the house. Yeah.
Imagine just being alone in the house with all the shit too. That alone, even if you didn't
I can't even.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even imagine it. Ed Gein, he confessed fairly quickly. There was also some speculation that Artie, the sheriff, maybe like roughhoused him a bit. But anyways, he confessed fairly quickly. He was met with some skepticism about the grave robbing. So police at first thought for sure he had killed just a ton of people, right? And he was just deranged killer. And they started trying to link all these murders to him, some even as far as Chicago, but he had never been out of Wisconsin his whole life. But then they checked the graves, many of the graves that he said that he had dug up, and he did in fact dig up these graves. And how horrifying for the families of these people as well, because, you know, eventually, so he was first brought in on like robbery charges before they had enough evidence, I guess, which seems strange to me. I mean, but
seems like he was trying to hide or not get caught.
No, I think like once he got caught, right? Like he had just kind of been getting away with this stuff for such a long time. But then once there were missing people, and also the Bernice stuff was just so
his name on the receipt
like,
or whatever it was.
Yeah. And just saying like, oh, I'm going to the hardware store. Like it was so not premeditated, but then he did the weird thing with the truck. So like, I don't know if at some point he thought maybe he could get away. I have no idea.
I think you want to know.
It didn't seem very
thinking. You don't want to get in his brain.
No. But the court did. The court did get in his brain because he was eventually arraigned for first-degree murder, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was actually found mentally incompetent, and he couldn't stand for trial. So he went to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, which is a maximum security facility. It's now called the Dodge Correctional Institution. Then he transferred to the Mendota State Hospital in Madison. And in 1968, Gein was found competent enough to stand for trial, and he was tried and found guilty. But on a second trial regarding sanity, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly how that works, but he didn't go to prison. He went back to the state hospital. And he was there for the rest of his life. He eventually died from lung cancer. He was only charged with one murder, even though he admitted to killing Mary Hogan. He was only charged with Bernice. And it's because it was just like a cost thing, because they knew that he was going to be in like the state hospital for the rest of his life anyway.
That's shitty for the family, though, to not get that closure.
Get that closure.
Maybe they were okay once he was in jail, or not jail, but the hospital for the rest of his life.
Hospital, once he was there. And that is the story of Ed Gein.
Cute. I feel really good after that one.
Yeah. So, this is for sure a downer episode. Like, you're not going to feel good after any of these.
My next one is a downer, too.
Great. We're just going to be in a real...
Drink up.
A real spiral. So that's number one is Ed Gein, the guy who inspired Psycho. He inspired a lot of movies, right? A lot of movies out there, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre and some characters from Silence of the Lambs. Of the Lamb. Okay. Our second option here is Joe Douglas Ball. And he influenced Eaten Alive and also an episode of Bones. And he is also known as the Alligator Man.
What? Some Florida shit.
Yeah. It's actually in Texas.
Oh, okay.
So when I was reading it, I thought it was going to be Florida shit too, but it's Texas.
Okay, fine.
Today it would be Florida shit, let's be real.
Okay. You ready for some ASMR? Just as a little serial killer break?
Yeah. Ooh, very nice. That was really good ASMR.
Oh, that's good. I wish I had the long nails that they all have, though. They're like clickety clack on everything.
No, okay, now it just sounds like I'm scratching. Very nice. I needed that, honestly. This one's dark.
Oh, here.
Okay, so Joe Ball was born on January 7th, 1896 in San Antonio, Texas. He was the son of a pretty wealthy father, a farmer, and his brother later became the mayor of Elmendorf in Texas. So he seemed to have like a pretty well-to-do family, but it was also like 1896 in Texas. So I don't know what the landscape was there at that time. In 1917, Joe enlisted to fight in the Great War in the Army, and he was supposed to be a really good shot. He was honorably discharged in 1919. So up until this point, he seemed to have, there are no major red flags. But when he came back, it was during Prohibition, and he became a bootlegger. His father was pretty good with business, and he seemed to have picked up some of his skills there, and he would be pushing whiskey and things like that. At some point, he hired a handyman who was Black, and his name is Wheeler. And he was extremely mean to Wheeler. Like, he would shoot at his feet and like get him to dance. Like, he was not very, very good to Wheeler. As I continue the story, I do want to point out that there is a lot of legend around Joe Ball. So there's a lot of stuff that's been attributed to him that is good and bad and very like fantastical and really gruesome.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to decipher what's real just because it was the late 1800s in Texas. So there wasn't a lot of record keeping in this small town, right?
Okay.
So I just want to keep that up because this checks out, and Wheeler is one of like the few people who was able to share knowledge with the police down the line. But like things that his nephew would say about him just seems kind of fictional, like he would donate all this money and stuff like that. It just doesn't seem in line, but that's what was said as well. So weird figure. So after Prohibition, Ball opened a bar. He opened this tavern, and behind the tavern, he built a big pool where he would catch alligators and then house them in this pool. Now I have the biggest trigger warning of the whole show. And this is like specifically for you and me because I was heartbroken when I read it.
No, it's not pets, is it?
Yeah. Do you want me to just skip by that? All right. I'm not going to go into detail about it. Yeah, I'll give you the gist. So basically people would get super duper drunk at this place. And for entertainment, he would do bad things with stuff that he would find outside. Really bad.
Okay.
So yeah, but exactly what you're thinking. So that's why I'm like, when people are like, oh, he seemed like a great guy.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, especially when it was like only his nephew.
Not my
whoever
decision
said
yet,
that.
but
Everyone
maybe.
else was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was just, that's like the worst thing that you can do in my opinion. It's just awful.
Yep.
You have to be like a certain type of psychopath. All right. So the tavern was really wild, and he would also, in addition to these really horrific ways to entertain his clientele, he also hired women to be barmaids. And keep in mind, this was in the 1920s in Texas, and there were women who, if they went missing, a lot of times they would never be found, especially if they were not so well-to-do and working in shady circumstances, like in a bar.
I mean, that stuff still happens.
Of course,
Like sex
it
workers
absolutely
and stuff,
still
they don't
happens.
look as hard.
They don't look as hard. Yeah, it's really, really unfortunate, and you'd hope that would change, but it still happens all the time.
Yeah.
So because of this, and I'm kind of like telling you something up front, but Joe's only really charged with 2 murders, but he could have killed up to 25 women.
Jeez.
So we just don't know. But there's only 2 that we know about for sure. So he would hire all these barmaids, and he would have relationships with them. One of the women that he had a relationship with was Minnie Gotthard. She had a relationship with Joe, and they kind of ran the bar together. But then again, if you're like running a bar like that, I mean, I don't know. So, and they seemed to be pretty happy until Joe met Dolores Buddy Goodwin, who was 15 years his junior. And according to Wikipedia, they were married or they were just in a long committed relationship. But he was super abusive to Dolores Buddy Goodwin. And he once threw a bottle at her face, which gave her a scar from her eye to her neck.
Ooh. Ow.
Yeah. Then he met Hazel Brown, one of the other barmaids who was hired, and she's supposed to be really beautiful, seductive, dark hair, dark eyes, very glamorous. And Joe was said to have fallen in love with her. Minnie really didn't like that he was with these other women, and she was said to have been really upset. And shortly after she was being upset, I suppose, Minnie one day just disappeared. Yeah. So Ball told people that she was pregnant and she had gone to the hospital and she was going to stay there, but none of her clothes were packed or anything like that. At one point, Dolores, his wife / partner, lost her arm. And there were rumors flying all around town that either one of the alligators had ripped it off or he had cut off her arm and fed it to the alligators.
Oh,
this proved to be just one of those fantastical things that people would make up about him. She actually lost it in a car crash.
Okay.
So at some point, Hazel also disappeared. And shortly after Hazel Brown, so that was the pretty dark hair,
So he was
dark hair,
married
dark
to
eye
Minnie.
girl.
She disappeared, and then his next girlfriend was Dolores. You said? Did I?
Yeah, I don't know if he was married to Minnie. I think he was just in a relationship with Minnie. I think he was married to Dolores.
Okay. So Minnie disappeared. Dolores lost her arm.
Yes.
But she was alive.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she was alive, and the arm was lost in a car crash.
Okay.
So Dolores is the one who had the scar from her eye to her neck.
Right. Okay.
She ends up not disappearing, or she actually did disappear for a little while, but she came back. So she was alive. She's the only one of these 3 who are alive.
Okay.
So there's Minnie, Dolores, and Hazel. And Dolores is also the one who, even though she's badly abused, he's like married to her.
Okay.
So then Hazel disappears, the last one. And there's a man who's walking outside of Joe's bar, and he smells this terrible stench from a barrel outside the bar. And he goes to the police officers. And when the cops come to investigate, there's no barrel anymore. But that story of a barrel with something inside that smelled really bad was corroborated by somebody else. So the cops came back to question Joe and to arrest him. And when the cops say that they were going to arrest him, Joe says, well, hey, let me have a beer first.
What?
And yeah, and the cops were like, okay. So they go to the bar.
Okay. What?
Yeah.
Huh.
So
Sure,
they
drink
go
up.
back to the bar. Yeah. And Joe takes out a gun, and he does not shoot the officers. He shoots himself in the chest
These
and he
fucking
dies.
cops. Oh my
Yeah. I don't know
God.
why they
Okay.
were. That's a warm day. Let's go have a beer. I mean, the 1800s was a wild
Yeah,
time,
you're
right?
right.
Or I guess this is the 1900s. This is like post-prohibition. This is
Oh,
the
yeah.
1930s,
Still
actually.
wild,
This is
though.
1938. What am I talking about? All right. So the handyman that we spoke about before, Wheeler, Clifford Wheeler, he ends up being taken in by the police, and he admits to helping Ball dispose of the bodies of the two women that he had killed.
Why would he admit to that?
I think he was forced to. Well, keep in mind, this is also like a black man in Texas in
Yeah.
the 30s, so he's
True.
probably pretty fearful. And also, it sounded very much like he was forced to help Ball do a lot of things because Ball was influential. His brother was a mayor. He's this rich white man. And then you have his handyman who he is just constantly abusing in different ways.
Yeah.
So
I gotcha.
yeah, so he admits to helping Ball dispose of the two bodies, and he describes how Ball killed both Minnie and Hazel. So with Minnie, she was getting really jealous, and then she tells Ball that she's pregnant.
Okay.
And after finding out, Ball shoots her in the head.
Jeez.
Yeah. And he ends up burying her in the sort of sandy area outside of town. He first had her strip, and then he shoots her, which is weird. He's just like a psychopath. Yeah.
Like degrading her, maybe? I don't know.
Just degrading her. Yeah. Making her feel, yeah. So, and then with Hazel, so Hazel Brown, she was younger, she was really pretty, right? And so she had fell for one of the regular customers who seemed like a more stand-up person, and she wanted to stop working for Ball. And Ball lost his temper, went crazy, and started hitting her over the head with his pistol. And then he shot her for good measure as well. For Hazel, it gets grosser because he brings her to this campground with Wheeler, and he dismembers her, and he buries her body, and he burns her clothes. So he buries her body in like different areas, and Wheeler leads the police to both of these areas, and the police do find the remains of both Minnie and of Hazel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did Wheeler get in trouble, though? Hopefully not.
Wheeler did get in trouble. He got 2 years, so he didn't get like life or anything. He got 2 years in prison. And when he got out, he started his own bar in town, but then he closed it down and he left town. Also, the alligators were donated to the San Antonio Zoo, so they weren't killed, which is good because it wasn't their fault.
I have a really silly story about an alligator with my dad.
Oh, no, tell me.
When he was younger, it was popular to mail people tiny baby alligators as pets. I'm dead serious. I'm not making this up. And so my great aunt mailed him a freaking alligator in like a postal package. I don't even know how they survived, but everybody was doing it. And my dad opens the package and it's like a baby alligator, which you're like, okay, maybe it's not as dangerous because it's a baby. That thing snapped. I think it was his thumb. It snapped his thumb and a hole pierced through his entire thumb.
Of course. It's a freaking alligator, even if it's a baby.
But like,
oh man.
So he was born.
What did he do with it?
I have no clue. I mean, he probably put it in Pine Lake in Indiana. I have no idea.
This is how Lake Placid starts.
I know. We had Chance the Snapper in Chicago. Do you remember that?
No.
Oh God.
No.
Someone let an alligator loose in Humboldt Park in Chicago. This was like just a few years ago, and it got nicknamed Chance the Snapper.
Like I got it.
Yeah.
I was like, that name is great, but no.
You're in Chicago.
You're in Chicago. Well, I'm glad that you had that fun anecdote because this is getting dark.
Little sidebar.
So, It was a good, happy sidebar. So that's kind of the end of the story. There were so many rumors about how he fed all these other barmaids and their bodies to the alligators, and that's how he cleared the evidence. But there's no real evidence to indicate that, and they didn't find body parts in the feed barrels or anything like that. They just found, unfortunately,
well, he's got alligators,
other animals that shouldn't have been fed to them. But so that is the story of Joe Ball.
Great guy.
Okay, so that's option 2. So now we are at our final option, and this is the story of Dr. Alfredo Ballí Treviño, and he inspired the character of Hannibal Lecter.
Oh boy. Oh no.
Yeah. But I will say a bit of a spoiler. It is not the cannibalistic part. That was actually probably more from other serial killers. And there are so many cannibals because, like I mentioned before, almost did the cannibal episode. Might still do it, but at another time.
Okay. I need a stronger drink for that.
I need a stronger. Yeah, that's a mixed drink type day. So this story is going to start off with the writer Thomas Harris, who wrote Silence of the Lambs and the other Hannibal books, which the movies were adapted from.
Okay.
So Harris went to Mexico, and while he was there, he went to the Monterrey prison to interview an inmate who was an American man who was convicted of a triple murder. And that guy's name is Dykes Askew Simmons, which really isn't that important to the story, except that he had been shot in the leg and he was being tended to by a doctor.
Okay.
So this doctor was going by Dr. Salazar. And Harris was talking to him, and he found him very, very calm and very refined and dignified in his manner. And so it wasn't until later that he found out that this doctor was an inmate himself.
What?
Yes. And the doctor was not actually named Salazar, but he was actually named Alfredo Ballí Treviño.
Also, it's like another Dr. Death.
Yeah, but he didn't kill his patients.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ballí Treviño was born to a pretty wealthy family. He had a very strict father who pushed the boy, Ballí Treviño, and his siblings to excel in their studies. And so Trevino went to become a doctor. And as a medical intern in 1959, he got into an argument with his lover, Jesus Castillo Rangel. And due to either money problems or Jesus's insistence on marrying a woman, the would-be doctor killed his boyfriend, carefully sliced him into pieces to fit into a box, and attempted to bury the box on a ranch.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
All these breakups. Now I know why ghosting is a thing. It's much more.
Yeah, seriously.
Much less criminal.
I'd much rather be ghosted than be ghosting someone else.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, okay, yeah, all right.
No, you got the dad joke going.
I got the dad joke in. All right. Oh boy.
Anyway.
I regretted saying that as soon as I said it. Okay. So his handiwork, and his meaning Dr. Salazar, aka Alfredo Ballí Treviño, was very quickly uncovered, and he was sentenced to death in 1961 for his crime of passion. He was also suspected in the killing and dismemberment of hitchhikers, but there was never any proof around that. He had the nickname the Werewolf of Nuevo Leon in prison.
Why?
But I can't tell you why.
Okay.
I don't know. He would wear like a Rolex watch in prison, which
that seems dangerous.
I don't know. Yeah, and I also just don't know how he got it in there.
Oh, you're arresting me? Let me grab my Chanel.
Yeah, I don't know. He had dark shades and stuff, and light color shoots. So I'm not really sure how he got that all into prison, but he it's very bizarre. There's also very little information about this guy, for some reason, except from these reports. So
yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I'm surprised, but I guess it's because it's not that sensational, except that he had an informal medical practice in this prison, and he would tend to other prisoners and visiting townspeople, would like come and get checked out by him. So I guess this must have been a pretty small town. So his sentence was commuted after 20 years behind bars, and he returned to his old neighborhood to treat the sick and the poor, often for free. He never really talked about his violent past, saying that he, quote unquote, speaking of ghosts, I don't want to wake up my ghosts. But what's interesting about him is just his, I guess, his kind of general creepiness, and the scene between Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins, where they have like this conversation, was very much inspired by Harris's conversation with him.
Conversation? That one?
I don't remember. No, I don't think that one. No, that was probably even more creepy. And that is our final, that is the story, the short and relatively light story, aside from him slicing up his boyfriend, of God. Alfredo Ballí Treviño, the Hannibal Lecter.
So he killed one person.
Yeah, and potentially a couple of hitchhikers, but we don't know.
Yeah, fuck them.
For sure. Yeah. Hitchhiking's bad. Don't do it.
Wow. By the way, my mom has a huge crush on Anthony Hopkins.
Really?
How funny is that? Yeah.
That's a funny guy to have a crush on, but I kind of get it.
Yeah.
He's got that sort of like that vibe that is kind of sexy.
Manly, British, sophisticated.
And like a little creepy, but in kind of like a cool way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Weird taste, Mom.
All right. So which of these would you fuck, marry, kill? Again, Ed Gein, Joe Ball, or Alfredo?
I think right away I would marry Alfredo, only because he helped people too. Yeah. So he like actually volunteered and stuff, and that sounds like almost a crime of passion. So it doesn't seem like he was, unless he did kill a bunch of hitchhikers. But if it was just the boyfriend, I feel like it was just a crime of passion thing, and he wasn't permanently a serial killer.
Yeah.
So we'll marry him.
Uh-huh.
Joe Ball killed 3 people, and Ed Gein killed 2. But Ed Gein's so fucked up.
So actually, Joe Ball also just killed. Joe Ball killed 2. Ed Gein may have killed 3, including if we include his brother. Mm-hmm. But also, Joe Ball may have killed like 25. Okay. So we don't know.
God, but Ed Gein's so creepy with what he did to the bodies. I think I would kill Joe Ball because he was kind of a shithead to women, and he killed possibly a ton of people. But the things Ed Gein did, mostly he did to people when they were already dead. So it didn't really matter. Is that the weirdest thing in the world?
No, so because I totally agree with you.
Ed Gein.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you.
Okay.
There's something about, also because Ed Gein he had some severe mental problems. And I'm not saying that Joe Ball didn't have severe mental problems, but like the way that Joe Ball treated women and abused them. And also, I can't get over the pet thing. That to me is like, horrific. As soon as I read that, I was like, I already know what's happening with this dude.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we agree again.
All right. We agree again. Cheers.
Cheers. Let me know what you guys think too, who you would fuck, marry, and kill. Not that you would want to do that with anybody other than kill. But and send us
let us know.
Yeah, send us your suggestions on new subjects we should research and talk about, and fuck, marry, and kill. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, and remember that you can reach out to us on social media and on our website. We have an email on there as well. So those are the 2 ways to reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.